Welcome back to another episode of the Agent Spotlight podcast. Today we had a very different but also special guest join me. I had Gabe Folmar, who is a new employee here at NIM. He takes us through a pretty interesting journey. He started going into the military. He was there for 12 years, ventured into the healthcare imaging space before he ended up joining us. And, it's pretty interesting just to talk to him and, see how his first month has been here with us. He talks a lot about the culture that we have going on here and the culture that we're building and taking himself through, the process of what he's learning and where he's going and where we're going. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoy. So take me back a little bit.
Yeah,
Right? You were 12 years in the military.
correct.
Then went into the healthcare field.
Yes.
So how'd you kind of end up on that path?
So yeah, instead of going the traditional college route after high school, I went into the Air Force, did 6 years active duty, and then did 6 years in the Air Force National Guard. Finished that up. I went to college at Penn State for a couple semesters around COVID, and then COVID happened. We all got sent home, and then I was just trying to figure out, what do I need to be getting into for work that's going to be secure and have, I can have a job, because all the jobs were just all the essential workers were the only people working. So my thought process was, I need to find a job that I know is going to be available in the event that this happens again or that this keeps going on. So yeah, I was looking up good healthcare jobs, and medical imaging kept coming up. So I got into that, did that for, I think, about 3.5 years, worked clinically with patients in hospitals. And then I was looking to find myself in a different role, and that's how, I ended up here at NIM.
Okay. So what was the military life like? Because obviously, it's completely different. Not everybody is
sure.
really familiar with it. Most of the time, the things
Yeah.
that people are familiar with are like, what they see in documentaries and,
course.
just stuff like that.
Yeah,
So just take me a little bit about like what your experience was like.
for sure. Well, of course, being in the Air Force, the first question you get asked is, do you fly planes? Everybody thinks Top Gun, and that's that's definitely Hollywood, and there are people that do that, but it's a very small amount of people that do that. So there's, a ton in the military. There's logistics. I mean, there's healthcare workers in the military. There's everything, they've got a job for everything you have to. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff. But a lot of people just kind of think what they see on TV. It's either you're on the front lines doing combat stuff, or you're flying the planes, or you're like in the tanks. But I was in security. So I did, security operations. I was stationed in DC. So that was kind of like a presidential hub. All the big agencies are there. The CIA's within that area. Secret Service is obviously there, all those big agencies. So within the security operations, like what that looks like on a day-to-day basis, I might have been performing security measures or overseeing them. The day-to-day kind of shifted based on like what was happening that day. So a lot of coordinating with different agencies that were there, with Secret Service, depending if there was going to be movement of assets, whether it's aircraft or important people going on.
Yeah.
So for me, the day-to-day looked like, getting on post and then just doing like the security measures. Like I said, whether that was me doing them myself or overseeing other people doing them.
Yeah.
And it's just like I said, a lot of attention to detail with the coordination with like Secret Service and stuff like that.
Sure.
They want all that stuff to be flawless when you're working with, high visibility people and stuff like that. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
That had to have been a pretty interesting transition from that to healthcare imaging.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, even just transitioning from getting out of the military and being a civilian, which is not like that's just unique to me. That's everyone who gets out of the military. After being in active duty for 6 years, and I found myself at Penn State, it's just like culture shock. I'm like, wait, I can just do what I want,
Not told what you have to do like every
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why I went into the military like right after high school, was because I didn't know what I wanted to do in college. So the military just felt like a more structured route, like more security. And then same thing again, the security comes up with getting into healthcare because the security is there. So I think looking back, I was probably trying to follow some sort of sense of security in work, just because I have so many friends, and that you might too, that went to college and got degrees and they're not they don't have jobs that their degrees in.
Yeah.
You know, so I think I was conscious of that and was hesitant to try and, like not go down that
Sure.
road.
I can
you
relate
know.
to that. I was one of those people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're sitting across from one right
Yeah.
now. So whenever you were making that transition, you've been in the healthcare industry there for the imaging aspect, for a couple years at that point. You know, what were you looking for then for the next move
Mhm.
after that? Had you thought about it too much, or were you still kind of maybe like, in that almost like day to day, just, going to work, grinding a little bit?
So I think probably the first year and a half of doing that, I was all in. I was super passionate about it. I enjoyed it every day. I think probably within the first to second year, I started to I found myself craving more responsibility, I guess, or more wondering what the next stop in the progression of like developing myself in that field was.
Mhm.
And I think that goes back to probably being in the Air Force too, because they just drilled in professional growth and self development always, whether it's like getting your next rank or there's just like a bunch of other self development things we had to do. So I think that was kind of always in me from the military. And then when I was in my healthcare job, I found myself in the same boat where I'm like, all right, what's next? What do I have to strive for next? What's the next position or the next, milestone I can hit? And there really wasn't that in that field, so I found myself feeling ambitious, but didn't really have a way to exercise or to get it out or anything, so then the gears were turning. I'm like, all right, what role do I want to see myself in? Just kind of did a lot of thinking, reflecting on, what I saw myself being in and excelling in. And I knew I probably had to get away from working for a huge healthcare organization, where you're kind of a cog in the wheel. Um, so yeah, I think that's probably what my thought
Yeah.
process was.
How did NIM end up coming on your radar at that point?
Yeah, so I ended up here in Pittsburgh and was going to a run club, and I just happened to strike up a conversation with the guy next to me, just about something we were talking about in the moment, and we hit it off. And we stayed after for a little bit and talked. And he told me what he does. I told him what I do, and he said I think he said or I might have asked him if he was involved in Medicare because he was talking about being involved in insurance. And, he said that he wasn't, but he was kind of like maybe loosely attached to it or was involved with people that were involved in Medicare.
Mhm.
And I had told him a couple years ago that Medicare was on my radar because I have a friend who him and his family are in the Medicare business, and they seem to do well for themselves and enjoy the work that they do.
Mhm.
So that was kind of already cooking like in my head for a couple years at that point. But I think I got lost in trying to figure out how to get licensed or how to even go about the process.
Yeah.
So it just fell off my radar, I think.
Yeah.
And then when I met him, this guy at the run club, and I told him that Medicare was on my radar, and just like I told you, it fell off. And he's like, well, I know someone who's involved in Medicare, and I don't know if he's looking to hire or anything, I can't promise you that, but maybe you guys could connect and see what would happen.
Yeah. So I'll even take that then like one step further
Yeah.
because he texted me, told me like, hey, I have someone that like, if are you hiring,
Mhm.
what are you looking for anybody, blah, blah, blah. I have someone who's looking to do this.
Yeah.
We were hiring, not necessarily like exactly for like, some positions like in particular. But I was like, well, I'm gonna reach out. At least it's like it's worth having a conversation, right?
And I
Like,
told
no
you
matter
I
what.
didn't even know that he got a hold of you.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I called you, like left a message. I think you called me back, and like we finally ended up connecting. And you're like, I didn't even know like
Yeah,
that he
no,
told me
yeah.
you were actually
Yeah.
supposed to call me
Yeah.
at that point too.
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting how that, because like
Uh-huh.
again, he sent it to me, but didn't actually tell you, even though you guys were talking about it, he didn't
Yep.
actually tell you that he sent.
Yeah, I didn't
your
ask to
info.
really I didn't ask for him to connect us. I think he
Yeah.
just took it upon himself to do
Yeah.
it. So shout out to him for that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing him soon too, so it'll be good. I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
So after obviously like we connected, like what was that process like? With interview, I've kind of in a sense famously told you and probably a number of others like I don't know how to interview.
Yeah.
So what was that like for you as we were
Yeah.
getting through it?
So our interview process, if that's, I guess, what you would call it, was definitely casual, I would say, informal, but you were very dialed in on trying to find a right fit for the culture, that you were trying to really structure here at NIM. Um, I think we talked on the phone initially for like an hour, and then we met twice for maybe an hour or two each time. And I think each time we just really got into our passion for growth and where we see ourselves going, and it felt really casual, to be honest, like more of just you feeling me out to see if I would fit the culture here, and
Yeah.
like what my motivations and aspirations were and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely it wasn't standard interview for sure. Just I remember, yeah, just sitting next to each other, on the at the bar on stools, just figuring out, you know,
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Is
what our interests were and
right.
personalities and stuff like that.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's evolving, just in
Yeah.
general, but I know I've said that to kind of like a number of people, and I know I said that to you like a number of times
Yeah.
and whatnot too.
And I think when me and Pat were talking, he said too, like, I think it's something along the lines of, Matt's big on just trying to see if you're gonna be someone he wants to work with in the office, you know.
Mhm.
Are you a good contributor to the culture? Are you someone
For
that
sure.
just, brings good energy? And that's,
Yeah.
how the interview ended up going,
Yeah,
you know.
pretty much. So, skipping around a little bit, because
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about this a little bit later, but I think now is a good time to bring it up.
Uh-huh.
You've been here for a few weeks now, actually a little over a month.
hmm
Um, what have you noticed about the culture here?
Everybody is very on board and aware of the culture. Um, there's not really any I don't want to go off on a tangent on this, but in the military, they had a culture too. They had core values, and it was preached everywhere. But kind of like you had mentioned earlier, it felt a little more of like a marketing thing,
Mhm.
where it's plastered on every building on a bunch of material. You have to memorize it. So like it felt very much more like a marketing thing. Where here the culture, it's really emphasized on just actually being about it.
Mhm.
Um, there's just such a commitment to um, maintaining the culture through the core values that you set. On a weekly basis, we're talking about how we contributed to the culture and the core values, or upheld them, or maintained them. So it's taken very serious here in a good way, not in like a cheesy culture way.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it's very prioritized
Yeah.
for sure.
Cool. Has anything surprised you about it? Whether it's just, that part in particular, or, comparing it to the military, or, the healthcare job?
Well, what's funny is that both sets are kind of similar. So service excellence here, in the Air Force, it was excellence in all that we do. So there's actually a lot of crossover.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it's nice that excellence is prioritized, because I feel like that's the kind of culture that I wanted to be in, and that I feel like I fit into. Like when I was working my prior jobs in healthcare and stuff like that. Um, I don't know, you lose some of that in a big organization, because you have employee spots you have to fill.
Mhm.
Sometimes you can't always pick the perfect person that contributes to the culture. You just have to, you have to have staff,
Mhm.
but here it's nice that you guys really pay attention to, um, uploading the culture through who you guys hire and stuff
Mhm.
like that. So what surprised me was just the commitment to it,
Mhm.
and everyone's on board with it.
Yeah.
Nobody groans or anything when it gets brought up. Everyone's all in on it.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of rare to find, maybe. Usually there's a couple people that aren't really all in on that,
For sure.
So I think it's surprising that everyone here is just on board with it.
Yeah,
You
I have to give a shout out to EOS in particular for
Yeah.
a lot of that. We've integrated that into our business, in particular, and it's been a huge game changer for us, overall. And as you're going through the process for it, and I know you're learning more, just
Yeah.
about EOS, and like how and why it all works, and things like that. So that way you actually, understand why we're doing the things that we're doing. I think that's extremely important for anything. Um, but, you know, it talks about how, you know, everybody every person, but then also every business has their own core values. But so many or so often, you know, we just don't take the time to actually think about them. You know what they are kind of intrinsically,
Yeah.
but you might not really be able to actually like express them and, actually be able to say, here's what they are in maybe like one or two words or,
Right.
whatever that ends up being. And that was a requirement for us
For EOS.
for us going through that process. And so, I mean, we had to spend a lot of time to actually, sit down and like decide like, what actually are they? Like, how can we actually articulate them and relate them to everything that we do on a daily basis?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's definitely changed a lot of, what we're doing here and has set us up going in a very good direction, at least from, from my perspective. And it's cool just to hear it like from your end though too, just being here, for a little bit of time
Yeah.
that like it's made like a legitimate impression to somebody outside of the organization that didn't necessarily know like anything else about it, like
Yeah.
coming
No
into it.
prior. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that is like actually kind of cool just from my perspective to be able to see and hear and everything.
And I don't know what it is exactly because when I worked for big hospitals and for healthcare systems, of course they had core values too. But again, it just felt more of the requirement that they had to tell you them. And, at your new hire orientation, they just go through them. It just all felt the same. I don't know, something about the core values here, just maybe it's the energy that is brought when they're discussed feels different. Because, yeah, most of the organizations I've worked for have had core values. But
Yeah,
I don't know, they just never seem to be really cared about.
sure.
They just exist on the PowerPoint slide.
Because they felt like they had to do that
Yeah.
type of thing. Yeah.
Yep.
So outside of that aspect,
Mhm.
take me kind of through like what's the first couple weeks / like month now been like for you?
It's been very eye-opening to see how complex Medicare is. I didn't know really anything about Medicare or health insurance before. I figured it was complex because nobody knows much about health insurance. Your average person, that's why they come here to get educated because it's complex and nobody really knows much about it. You're kind of just fed your insurance. And I'm the perfect example of that in the military. I just had track and never had to do anything. So like I was the perfect example of how it feels to not know anything about insurance. And I still really don't. I'm still trying to figure out like what my insurance situation is. So yeah, it's been eye-opening to see how much goes into all this.
Mhm.
I feel like my first week here, I was just super clueless to basic terminology, of course. And then, with each week, I think I've been here for like a month
Yep.
now, right? With each week, I start getting more familiar with the processes and stuff like that. And we're really just not even scratching the surface,
Pretty much, yeah.
So it's been very eye-opening to see, week by week, how thorough and complex of a thing this is.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's absolutely there is a lot to it and why I think, it's just so important for, you know, us to be there for our agent partners, us to be there for clients, whoever ends up needing help
Yeah.
within that space because it is very complex.
Mhm.
The vast majority of people have no idea how to actually navigate it. And just need guidance at a time that is very important in their life
Yeah.
and generally for the most part is one of the only ways or for most people might be the only way that they can get their health insurance at that point. So, you're basically required to do it, otherwise you get a penalty
Yeah.
and you don't know how to do it.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's scary. Like,
yeah, for sure.
yeah.
And yes, the whole adage right now is like, the 65-year-old kind of gets younger every day with technology and
More
information
information out
knows
there
on
and
it.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they still don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And so it is really, important for where we are at and with the type of business that we have for us to know that process, like hands down, no matter what, to be able to explain that to whoever needs to go through it and walk them through it. And I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen it, so many times for somebody that we've been able to help and them just like at the end be like, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Like I would have had no idea
Yeah.
how to do this.
I
So-
could see, like based on what you just said, how I've heard previously where if you meet with someone in person and you help them through this, like, oh, they're your client for life. I've heard that said in a couple different settings, and I could see how that would be true, you know,
Yeah.
just because you're guiding them through such like a tough decision that they're trying to make. And, there's like a lot on the line if to get them the right plan that they need and the right coverage that they need. I mean, yeah, it's like there's a lot.
For anybody new out there, right
Mhm.
now that's listening and is thinking about getting into it, just what was that initial part like? Just getting your health insurance license in general. So that way, somebody could listen and be like, all right, I would know at least like kind of like what I needed to do and like the process that you kind of went through to, actually
Yep.
start and finish that aspect.
Yep. So you definitely, I would say, have to choose some sort of online or hard copy. Like find a company that gives you study materials. I found one that I think you recommended it to me. It seems to be one of the ones that most people use, but I think there's other ones out there. So, find a business that does that and get the study material. I mean, if you're a hard copy person, get the book. I did get the book because I thought I was a hard copy person until you try and read through 400 pages of very technical terminology. And I had to rethink how I'm going to study for this because I'm like, there's no way I'm going to read this whole book.
Mm-hmm.
So I rethought my study process, and then I transitioned to more of like the online, the digital format. And I was just hitting practice test all day long, which, I was shut in my room most of the day, just studying and just repeating the practice test and just trying to absorb as much of that information as you can. So to somebody who's trying to get spun up on that, figure out if you're a digital or a tangible, studier. And I would say study the practice test as much as you can.
Yeah.
Because if you want to read the whole book, it's going to take forever and you're probably not going to retain most of it. So yeah, study, practice test as much as you can. And if you think you know most of it or a good amount of it, you probably don't, and keep studying more, you know. So yeah, that would be my suggestion is hit the practice test as much as you can.
Yeah. And I'll kind of throw out there too, you can get it done relatively quickly, overall, depending on what your version of quickly is. But,
Right.
I mean, you were here, we were really having you like that was priority number one. Like you knew that from the get go. We kind of, communicated that, a lot. And you got it done within a couple weeks, which, again, it's a lot of material to go through. But it was head down like, hey, we can't do
Yes, it
anything. We
was.
can't do other things until, this is kind of, taken care of essentially. So, for anyone out there, it's not going to happen in a day. It's not going to happen in 2 days.
Yeah.
But, it can be done. Like you can completely kind of change where you're at and like the things that you are able to do just within kind of like a couple weeks of going from just not even having your license to actually having it and being able to, venture down the health insurance path, in general.
Yeah. So if there's an agent that is trying to think about getting into Medicare, I mean, it can be done in, would it take me 3 weeks?
Yeah.
So it's possible,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And right now, right, we're just waiting for your national producer number to come back.
Yeah.
So what's the daily life looking for you, right this second, and then kind of what are next steps as you have come into the role of the Medicare support seat for us. You're going to be a licensed agent as well. So what are the next steps? What's the day to day kind of looking like for you right now?
Yep. So we've kind of evolved it as I'm getting more familiar with the day to day. Most communication traffic is email. So I'm getting exposed to more of the email traffic to understand how the agent conversations happen, how the client conversations happen, what's going on with different vendors. A lot of that just gives me exposure to all the different, um, I guess, dimensions that are going on here at NIM. So just just exposing myself, to as much of that stuff, and then that's kind of structured out to where in a month from now, there'll be added layers on top of that, and at my 90-day mark, a month after that, there'll be added layers on top of that. So just continuing to increase my day-to-day exposure, to get more familiar because there's so much to get familiar with. No, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Yeah.
No, but I mean, it is true. There is, and it's kind of funny in a sense, looking back and just like, if I take a step back and look at it as well with like,
Yeah.
because I'm generally very involved with the training and whatnot, and getting you going and all that type of stuff. It is actually interesting for me to see it and kind of view it from that lens,
Yeah.
in particular. Whereas it's an external agent partner, right? They're not in the office with me every single day, and learning everything else kind of that we have kind of going on in the business and whatnot too. Like you're definitely, obviously your primary focus is kind of in the Medicare aspect, but you are actually also kind of getting exposed to some other aspects of our business and whatnot too, just from you being around me. And that's probably where a lot of the complexity aspect is
Well, that's
coming into
great though,
play
because
too,
that just
right?
adds a well-rounded perspective, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. So it's kind of funny because we joke about it like a little bit too. You're like, I don't even know how you're doing this.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it. Yes. Yeah, you need 5 copies of yourself to be able to do the amount of stuff that happens here. It's crazy. Yeah.
So outside of that, what are you looking forward to most next coming up?
I'm trying not to rush the process. I feel like that's important to me, and whatever I do is enjoy the journey of getting to where you need to be, because if you just think about the destination so much, then the journey goes by and then you're just there. So um I really am excited to get to the point where I can operate independently and, meet with clients, service the agents, and just be able to do all that stuff without or with minimal assistance, from people here.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm really excited to get to that point, but I want to enjoy the learning process because I just am super curious and love learning as it is. So I want to really enjoy the process of just getting to that point instead of just wanting to be there. So yeah, I'm looking forward to just being at that point where I'm functioning. I'm just contributing and functioning and participating without having to ask you or Ruth 1,000 questions, which I'm sure is going to be happening very soon.
Yeah,
It's coming.
it's coming.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to having a rapport with our agents and clients, and
Yeah.
just being more known to all them. I'm still just barely getting out there and getting known to agents and stuff like that.
Sure.
So
Well, because like we said, first step was we need to get this done.
Right.
Everything else back burner.
Yeah.
Until we get this done. Like this is important
Yeah.
overall. We got one kind of other question at least for you. If you could describe NIM in one word, could you do that for one? Or also then, how would you describe us then? Like if we couldn't necessarily maybe do it in one word,
Yeah.
how would you describe us in general?
I feel like I'm gonna watch this conversation later and think, why didn't I say this word or that word? Because the best thoughts come after. But I feel like NIM, maybe I'll talk about it and then I can come to a one-word answer after. But everybody here is just super committed to servicing the agents and the clients to the best of their ability. It's super important. I hear and I see that you guys are, getting back to emails in a timely manner, or calling people back, or getting them the answer that they need, and just not leaving people hanging. I see that time and time and again here. So, in one word, like committed, maybe,
I was gonna say,
committed.
I didn't want to put the word.
Yeah.
You basically said it right at the
Yeah.
beginning, I think, as to like that would have been, that's a one. I like that you said that, because that's and I don't even know if you actually know this, because I don't know if you've watched it or not, but I was on another podcast. I got invited to join another podcast, and just asking me kind of towards the end, like what is something that like I would want to kind of like leave behind, or what's something that like I would want to have been like kind of like known for, almost in a sense. And it was, I used that word, was
That's crazy then. Wow. And I didn't even see the podcast, so I didn't know.
So no, it's kind of interesting that you actually just use that, which I like that, because I think it's true. That is something that I really want, and I want everybody out there to know that too. Whether it's a client, whether it is an agent, or a current agent, or a prospective agent partner of us, like I want every one of them to know that like we are committed to what we are doing here and helping you grow, and helping you get to wherever you need to be, wherever you're at that point. So yeah, with that, like I think that's a good place to end it, man. Like I appreciate you having here. It's been a great first month. I'm looking forward to see what we can end up doing together.
Yeah,
So,
me too.
cool.
Okay.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Agent Spotlight podcast. I hope you enjoyed the content that we went through today. If you're interested in learning more and any of this resonated with you, please feel free to check out our website, nimbroker.com. Give us a call, 412-782-1979, or send us an email at info@nimbroker.com. It's never too late to get started in Medicare. We're here to partner with you. We only win if you win.